Hello.
Welcome to Tabletop Transformations. Way over there side of me, that's Tanya Keenan.
Hello. And over on this side of me is Menachem.
Yeah, and Tanya is a mental health clinician focusing on youth work and working with the community mental health agency. She's also an avid gamer. I have seen plenty of evidence of that myself by playing games with her. She's been playing tabletop role-playing games for over 20 years. She's also the director of DoxaCon Seattle, a convention that explores the intersection of Christianity and sci-fi and fantasy.
And this is Menachem Cohen. He is a spiritual director, an interspiritual rabbi, and a tabletop game designer. He's been playing RPGs for a little over 42 years. The perfect number, the answer to everything.
Even next year, I'm just going to say 42 plus years.
I think you should, yes. Much of his work is in the design and use of role-playing games for spiritual growth, exploration, and healing.
And tonight, in between us, we welcome Ryan Cagle. Hey, how you doing, Ryan?
Glad to be here. Good. Glad to be here.
Ryan, you are, and everyone else, Ryan is the first other spiritual director I met that was already using games in spiritual direction, for spiritual growth, exploration, and healing work. So, and we found each other because we both were looking for others, and we are the ones we found. So he's a spiritual director. Yeah, go ahead. He's a spiritual director.
Yeah, I was just saying
it's we have a little lag.
No, I was just saying it was yeah, sorry. I was just saying it was just such a great happenstance, I think. So it was just really great. And it's been a fun year of getting to know you, Menachem, and have these conversations.
Likewise. Excuse me. Need to hit that mute sooner. Well, Ryan is a game designer, an anti-capitalist faith organizer, working alongside others in the backwoods of Alabama to cultivate a community of imagination and resistance. Ryan cut his TTRPG teeth on D&D 3.5 as a middle schooler and believes that gathering around the table to play TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games, and communal worship have been the most formative spaces in his life. So we're so excited to have you here. And we've done a couple of workshops, myself and Ryan, and Tanya, myself and Ryan. So we're glad to get back together and talk about games and spirituality and how we can use games for spiritual growth, exploration, and healing, for answering the big questions of life, for finding out who we are and how we want to be in the world, or other spiritual questions.
Like, what is our purpose in life? And what are we doing here on the planet? And how do we relate to everybody?
So
those are the questions I ask too.
Ryan, tell us a little bit, like, why do you do this? What's your hope? What's your vision for using games for spiritual direction?
Yeah, thanks, Menachem. I think for me, my biggest hope is just that folks can find space for that self-discovery, and primarily self-discovery, and then spiritual discovery in a safe place, in a place that maybe they couldn't explore certain ideas or concepts or theology or even ideas about themselves or things outside of some safe place like this. And so for me, in my own experience, that's exactly what tabletop RPGs have been. It was a place for me to safely explore theology and ideas and perspectives that I could not have explored outside, especially in my religious communities. And so that's really my goal, is that hopefully people will find wholeness in this work and become more in tune with who they are and be able to do it in such a way that just leads to greater knowledge of their self.
But the big question, the one people ask me all the time, is why tabletop role-playing games? How do they do that?
Yeah, I know for me, like it's a very experiential thing in my own personal history, because like you said in the introduction you gave, is that for me, sitting around the tabletop gaming, specifically even D&D 3.5 as a middle schooler, was one of the most formative places for me in my development. I was able to be someone at that table that I couldn't be outside of that space. And so I just think that they really foster an opportunity and cultivate a space for us to be able to do that deep exploration and ask those questions and try on new clothes and new perspectives and whole new identities in a way that just can't be done in other spaces. And I think there's plenty of other spaces in life that help kind of suspend reality and give us those moments. It's all of our spiritual practices and things are hopefully doing that to help cultivate a space for deeper connection with ourselves and the divine and God and however we see that. But I think there's something very special about the way that tabletop RPGs can foster that space.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think it's, they both tend to do similar things. There are ritual elements of both, right? So like, I mean, we're familiar with the ritual elements of sacred spaces, but there are ritual elements of tabletop role-playing games. There are certain rituals that happen, right? Like, I don't know, setting up your dice, lining up your dice, if you're one of our kind of people, but like, like I like to do, but also there's, there, to be able to enter, and I talk about this a lot, so I'm just going to keep doing it, liminal spaces, right? These kind of in-between spaces where we can, that's where we transform historically and anthropologically, that's where we transform. And so they have a lot of similarities.
Well, in gaming, they call that the magic circle, right? The space of the gaming table where we have these rituals to get into it, whether it's the dice and the cheese puffs or it's more intentional. And then something happens inside the game, right? Where you don't do the things you do during the rest of the day usually, and then you leave the game transformed. But prayer, meditation, chant, sacred dance, they have the same kind of structure, right? You do a ritual to get started. You do a little chanting, you meditate for briefly before the main meditation. And you enter into this space where really what's the purpose of spiritual work other than some sort of transformation, right? Connection with the divine is transformative, right? Connection with that which is bigger than us, the unknown, the mystery we were talking about earlier in the pregame chat. Mm-hmm. And you leave transformed, right? So they both have these magic circles, which hopefully with intentionality are set up as safe spaces for growth and exploration. So,
well, I think before we get started into the nitty gritty, we might have some announcements to make.
Oh, we always do. We forget. Yes.
But
he's got so excited.
I know we did. We totally did. But I think that we should probably make those because at the end I'll just forget.
Yeah. Good catch.
Thanks. So everybody, if you are enjoying this evening, we have a Friday night cast tomorrow night. No?
Nope. Oh, did I not get you the updated sheet with the announcements?
No.
Isn't that what I linked you to just a few minutes ago? I apologize. Cast is off. Friday night cast is off this week.
Oh.
But we return July 1st.
Oh, July 1st.
At 8:45 Central.
Okay.
With Avatar Legends.
Oh, that's right. Oh.
For those of you who know, we are playing in the pre-Kyoshi era, where there was no Avatar. Tune in to find out what I mean.
Nice.
And if you don't have the updates, then I'll.
No, it's okay. I think I've got it straightened out now. Actually, that is I'm sorry. On the
July 3rd.
On July 3rd, we have that one's not updated. We do have Gaze of Our Lives, playing Traveling Home, Our Traveling Home by Ash Kreider. It's a game about happy queer romance, found family, and finding healing through belonging.
I can spell.
I it's like I finding halos.
The next game is July 3rd at 3 p.m. Central here on Twitch.
Nice.
I did not
Okay.
change it. I updated that at the end, but I didn't change the date at the beginning. Anyway,
okay.
brain's still a little foggy from COVID.
And
I'll use that as an excuse for another week or two.
And I had a final today. That will be my excuse.
Yeah. Good one. So tonight we are going to play Ryan's solo journaling game, The End and the Beginning. Now,
go ahead. I was going to say, we're going to play it together. And that's what I'm super excited about.
Yes. Participatory.
Yes.
Please. So what's going to happen is Ryan's going to read us a bunch of prompts when we start playing the game. Normally you do this on your own, right? And you would use the prompts and you write in your journal and work it through. But Ryan has been working on using his solo journaling games in groups. And since we don't have everyone's voice, but we're going to ask you to participate as much as you wish by typing your responses in the Twitch chat. And then we will read them aloud to build this. We're going to do a little bit of world building and such. You'll understand more in a few minutes. So, Ryan, tell us about the game.
Yeah, so this game, The End and the Beginning, was initially, again, just a solo role-playing journaling game that I come up with. And I've been using it in group settings, and it's been super fun. Honestly, way more fun in group settings that I found than just in solo play personally. The game kind of came around just because last year I committed to making at least a single page role-playing game every single month of 2021. And I was kind of in a place where I was binge watching a lot of TV, and I had been rewatching the Dark Crystal movie and the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And so I was just thinking about some of the themes in there. And of course, I'm just always within scripture, the main kind of quote that kind of is at the top of this game is actually from the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, which a lot of folks in my world would not consider scripture, but it's definitely something I do. And the quote is Jesus saying, "For where the beginning is, there the end shall be." And so I was just meditating and thinking on that. And it's a quote from the Dark Crystal from Mother Agra, if you're familiar with the show, where she says, "In beginning makes no difference, all the same." And so I was just thinking about this kind of cyclical nature to life and death and resurrection and rebirth and all of those things. And so it came to fruition in a game that I didn't even necessarily mean to be overtly spiritual, despite the connotations of scripture and those kind of things. It was just, I was just thinking about the end of the world, as one does, especially probably in a current state of our political, social, and environmental issues that surround us. And so I just came up with this game for my monthly challenge, and have fallen more and more in love with it, the idea, and as I use it in these settings. So yeah, that's it. That's the end and the beginning.
So I guess, shall we discover through play why this game is good for spiritual growth, exploration, healing, or do you have some thoughts you want to share before we play?
Yeah, I think definitely in the playing, and it happens because, again, I didn't write this game to be necessarily used in this setting as far as overtly for kind of spiritual discovery and exploration. And I actually started using it because in seminary in my fall semester last year, I had to lead a prayer practice. And I was just like, everyone had kind of filled out a great and wonderful kind of myriad of different prayer practices or spiritual practices to kind of open up our class time. And I was just like, I want to do something that's more my speed and something more along the lines of what I'm interested in. And so I got to looking at the games that I made and which ones I thought could work. And so I picked this one and did it. And it was such a huge success in that space, whether it be for kind of cultivating moral imagination or dealing with grief or loss. There's a lot, the whole game centers on this idea of the end of the world. So there's a lot of space there for that kind of reflection, I think, to kind of confront death and endings and look towards beginnings and those kind of things. So even though I don't think it's overtly spiritual in the sense, and that a lot of it does come out through the discovery. I do think that some of it now, at least looking back on it, is a lot more evident than I would have imagined when I first wrote it last year back in June.
All right.
No, that sounds it sounds amazing, and it sounds I really like that. I think it's really beautiful, trying to make my words happen, that you, when presented with the opportunity to lead prayer or to lead this kind of spiritual journey, that this is what you picked, right? That this is this it really brings, I think it's really engaging. It just invites everybody into the process. And that's not always been my experience of prayer or even communal prayer.
Right.
Well, was it, I know that people like Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and others would march, like when he marched in Selma with Martin Luther King Jr. and others, said he was praying with his feet. So we're going to pray with a game if you're so inclined.
I like that.
So tell us. Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell us.
I was going to say, tell us about the game. Bring us into the game.
Yeah. So I guess just one more kind of note is that I think it's to the work of any kind of spiritual work or self-discovery, like imagination is such a huge part of that, an important role. Obviously, if you're going to play a tabletop RPG on some level, you have to kind of facilitate a space to imagine something. But the thing that I found out that I love most about this game is that it's really specifically and just directly about being able to imagine a different world. And I just think that that's one of the most important spiritual works we can do, especially in our day and age. Like all the issues around us, we have to be able to imagine something different. And I feel like that's a really kind of critical role in all of my work around spirituality and organizing and those kind of things here, whether it be with games or not, is how do we help people imagine that there can be something different, that there's other alternatives, that there's different worlds, that something else is possible. And I think that that's really something that tabletop RPGs can help foster, that ability to realize that there could be another way to solve this problem. That maybe doesn't include swinging a sword, depending on your role-playing game, or plundering a place. There's other solutions, and so again, I guess I touched on kind of where this game kind of come from and how it is, how it's originally intended to be played. But kind of answer your question, Menachem, it's essentially you play, and when we enter into the game, kind of part of like the intro kind of lead in, we'll get into more details, but essentially you are a being called the Watcher, very similar to like Marvel's Watchers. You are destined to watch the end and beginning of worlds, the passing of history and time, without the ability to intervene at all. And you carry these civilizations and worlds into eternity, so to speak, in your own memory, keeping them alive, for better or worse, I suppose, for your own character. And usually you would play this as an individual kind of, there's several prompts that really kind of correlate to 7 days, that kind of fit into kind of like the idea of the Genesis narrative, as far as like 7 days of creation. This is 7 days of ending ultimately. But here in this space, we are collectively the Watcher, which is a little different than how it's intended to be played. And I like to think about it that way. It's not that we are all individually Watchers, but we are all one Watcher. We get to all occupy this one being together in this space.
I'm ready.
I'm ready too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you already watching? Because we're going to ask you to respond to the prompts in the chat.
Yes. Yeah.
And imagine, as Ryan kind of alluded to, role-playing games help us imagine possibilities. I love that. And let's imagine some possibilities here.
All right. Well, if we are ready, again, just go ahead and say thank you, Tanya, Menachem, for kind of helping manage things that get put in the chat, just so that we can have that kind of participation. We'll kind of just begin by centering ourselves, and I'll kind of do a lead in. And the very first prompt will be one that you don't answer in the chat or answer out loud. But then when we begin with day one is when we will start actually answering them collectively together. And then the final prompt is one that in the past I have reserved for us people not to respond to in this kind of group settings. But the most recent time I got to lead this game alongside Tanya and Menachem recently, we opened that up, and it was so fruitful, I thought. So after the day one initial prompt, or the first prompt that we respond to, everything after that will be, you'll have the opportunity to respond to, even the final prompt. And it's a little more, it gets back into the personal kind of your experience of the game, kind of away from the collective being, back into our individual selves. But definitely want to encourage anyone to respond to that as well, because I think it has a lot to offer, especially in this kind of setting. So.
And just so you
Awesome.
know, we've already had reference to REM's End of the World in the Twitch chat.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
Take us in.
Well, before we get started, it might be good to, if anyone's in the chat, if there's anything that we do not need to touch on, safety, it's kind of a weird space for me to lead it this way in the sense of safety mechanics, but if there's things that we are non-negotiables, things that we do not need collectively to bring up, even if it's someone bringing something up in a chat, we don't want someone to feel uncomfortable or feel like this is not a safe place for this moment. So if there's anything, Tanya, Menachem, that you would like to raise that we need to avoid altogether in this game, then, and if anything comes up in the chat, that would also be great.
I guess it's worth mentioning that we will be discussing bringing up the problems the world faces, the created imaginary world that we're talking about faces. So given that, knowing that we're going to talk about societal or natural problems, is there something that is there something that if anyone has a line that we don't want to have brought up? Like in some games, I don't like to have homophobia and transphobia as part of the game, but because we're doing a game in which this is about what causes the collapse of a world, mm-hmm. I am comfortable in this game with if those are some of the problems of the world.
Right. Yeah, same. So we're going to give everybody a minute to maybe collect themselves, and just let us know in the chat if there's anything, anybody who's watching, if there's anything that you really don't want us to touch on, and we'll be happy to honor that boundary.
You can even private message Tanya or myself.
Yep.
So not everybody has to know what you're saying.
And just to note, like something may come up further into gameplay, and if it does, because mm-hmm. this is a game that very few people here have encountered. So if something comes up, then even if we're in the middle, I think it's more than okay to kind of bring it up and say, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with this. We can move on, or we can pivot."
Yeah.
We don't know what necessarily we might encounter collectively as we play. So
if something comes up, you can either type pause or an X, either in the collective chat or to Tanya or myself, and we'll pause and see what's going on. But you won't have to explain yourself. Just have to make sure we're clear what the thing is, and then we'll move on without that issue in the game.
All right. If everyone's ready, let's just take a few seconds here to kind of close our eyes and take a few deep breaths and kind of center ourselves. And then I will kind of lead in with some lead. And then when I'll introduce the first prompt, and I'll walk us through each prompt, just, as after answers and responses come in. All right, there we go. We are the harbinger of the end, the one that innumerable races have called the Watcher, a being whose sole role in the cosmos is to witness the rise and fall of an endless ocean of worlds and civilizations. Eons upon eons have passed, and we have watched the collapse of one world after another. Now, after all this time, unsure of even our own beginning or end. We have no knowledge of how we arrive at every new world on the verge of collapse. But here we are, faced again by another world crumbling. A society whose achievements, failings, and history are revealed to be nothing more than the passing of a shadow. A people in a world who will only be remembered by us, the watcher. Their lives, however brief, burned into our memory. We remember all of them, every world, every face of those lost to the tides of time. For us, this life may be one of endlessness, but we must learn to bear the weight of each and every end that we witness. After eons of watching worlds slip away, how do you feel? You can just answer this to yourself in this moment. Does your existence feel like a curse or a blessing? What do you think of those who maybe have fashioned you for this purpose? How do you perceive yourself after all of this time, unable to prevent the cycle of death and birth? If we have some sense of self, now we will move on to day one. This world. Describe this world. What does it look like? What makes up its geological features? What of its creatures? What makes it distinct among all the worlds we have been made to witness before it? What stands out? Feel free to answer.
Lots of water.
Mm.
Oceans or lakes?
Yes.
Lakes big enough to be small seas.
The sky is different than other worlds. It's a metallic rainbow.
Hmm.
2 suns and 4 moons.
Okay.
And I'm supposing we have like poetic, romantic names for each one of them.
Yeah.
We have those names, or the people have those names?
The people, sorry.
Yeah.
They do. See, here I am. I got pulled in real fast.
um,
In fact, there's the culture
and
reveres the suns and moons.
Yep. What creatures? Well, first of all, what is the land? I guess I want to know what the land looks like. So there's a lot of water, but there's got to be a little bit of land, right? Is that land desert? Is it forested? Is it weird fungi, covered in fungi?
Mountainous?
Rocky and
Swampy?
lush. I see in the chat, rocky and lush. Ooh, I like that.
Kind of imagine there's not really large land masses.
Mm-hmm.
There's like just narrow land masses that separate the waters.
Right.
Like the Emerald Isles of Scotland.
Yes. Yeah.
What kind of things live on this planet?
What's the plant life? What's the animal life? Humanoid life, if any of those things? Or something completely different?
Lots of underwater creatures I see. Yes.
The waters are inhabited by life.
Swarming.
Yes.
What level of sentience is there in this world? How much sentience is there?
Right. The skies become home to a sentient avian race.
So we've got large winged creatures
Yes.
who are sentient.
Yeah. Yeah. And they would have to be able to soar over large stretches of water and or swim.
So there's a lot of currents, wind currents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these sentient avian creatures have mastered or learned how to glide and soar for a long time.
Yeah.
But if we all feel comfortable with kind of this broad view of the world, maybe we can move on to diving in a little more further into what these sentient avian creatures are.
Okay.
Like.
Actually, we did have one more addition, which is lots of shape-shifting animals and insects, which I like that a lot.
Oh, I suppose if you have all water and you're flying, you should be able to survive in the water too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. Adaptable.
Yeah.
All right.
It's kind of like the rainbow. Yeah, every creature is kind of like to take the different colors of the rainbow.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. If we're all comfortable with that view of the world and the broad view of these skies and land and creatures that inhabit it, we'll move on to day 2. In the end of day 2, these people, we've already done this a little bit, but now it's time to dive a little further in, describe the inhabitants of this world, its people. What about them? What level of societal and technological development have they achieved? Who lives here specifically? What do they call themselves? What makes them unique among all the worlds that we've witnessed?
Imagining there's not a lot of use of the land. Right? They don't land on the land. They don't, there's not a lot of creatures that live solely on the land.
Ooh. Theology says, I see sky ships.
Imagining there's not a lot of use of the land.
So we have a high level of technological advancement.
Well, is it tech? Is it magic? Is it, just things that float naturally? How is it? Have these avian creatures built these things or magic them? Magic tech.
Magic tech. Yes,
Being
and yes.
Inclusive here.
So here's a question. Is it theirs or did they discover it?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I'm kind of vibing with it was found.
Yeah, I'm kind of vibing with that too. How do other people feel about that? maybe an advanced explorer race.
So what was left for these creatures? The tech was left intentionally?
Or was it left by it? Lost explorers left it on the planet.
So maybe it was
possibly on accident. The chat says on accident ? So we can decide if that was on accident or not.
I like the idea of some other planet's population going, let's play with these guys. Give them something to play with. So I don't know, I'm kind of leaning towards on purpose.
Okay.
What do you think, chat?
That's
good. So I guess my question is, what's the source of the magic?
Well, the chat's kind of going is saying they want it to be on accident, that the tech was left behind. The chat is overruling.
Okay, let's do it.
So it was an accident and not some other species playing games with this planet. But for now, the same person who brought up the accident question, saying, I like the idea of doing the heck with them. Let's play with these birdies.
All right. So is the consensus that it was left behind by accident, or was the consensus that it was placed here for?
Either two different texts, or they left it to play but then forgot about them.
Yeah. So one on purpose and one on accident is another suggestion. Also, two different texts, one left on purpose, one left on accident. And then the other suggestion was dropping it to play and then planning to take it back.
When theology is anticipating future questions, saying the two texts could cause division between the avians.
Ooh.
Hold on to that thought.
Yeah, hold that thought.
How do these people organize themselves? Like their families, their culture, their communities? Are they? I know we had talked about maybe society revering the moon and sun. So are they deeply religious? Are they more scientific? Where do they fall in that magic tech spectrum of things?
Do they have religion or just a spiritual sense of the sun and moons? Was it organized? How collective did they live? Did they live in, were these airships humongous, like holding thousands, or are they small, holding a few, dozen?
Right.
Or where on that scale? And I'm pretty sure we have a pretty significant lag right now.
And I guess my question, I'll say it again. What is the source of the magic? Like, how do they power these things? Or do they even know? Like,
does it just work?
Does it just work? Yeah. Okay. So we have something in the chat. What if they were vaguely spiritual until cross-contamination from material left in one of the ships was in there?
Say more.
I think I know what you're getting at too. That a holy book in the officer's cabin in one of the ships, like a holy book from the explorers, the alien explorers.
Got more religious. Zisa Chibi says one tech is solar powered, the other tech is lunar powered.
Ooh.
To point to few questions we haven't asked yet.
Yeah. Oh, I asked that question.
Right, but hinting at questions we haven't asked yet.
Oh, there we go.
Setting up some even more interesting possibilities for those of us who have encountered the prompts already.
Yeah, I would think the moons be magical, thus providing magical power, And Avery Weeks 1 likes lunar and solar powered tech.
Solar panels and lunar panels.
All right. So we have two kinds of tech. So how do these people live? What is their, do they have a governance structure? Are they independent one at a time? Do they live in clutches?
In
Do
tribes?
they live in cities?
Yeah.
Tribes. Yeah. And what do they call themselves?
Yeah.
They live in nests on these ships.
That's perfect.
Probably.
Yep. Oh, I like that a lot, actually.
It could be floating nests too.
Yeah.
I mean, we had established they don't use the land very much, so the nests have to be in the ships or.
Yep.
They call their families nests. I think says Theology.
That's kind of an interesting point, Theology, that that perhaps they were more sparsely populated when they had to have nests on the ground because the ground is so sparse. But once they discovered these ships that can fly around and house their nests, their families could grow bigger. Their nests could grow bigger. And they didn't have to stay on the ground.
Maybe some of them link their nests to other nests.
Mm. Okay.
And if we have lunar, right, yeah. And if we have lunar and solar powered, then we have really two cultures.
Right.
Like night and day kind of cultures. So we have these nest cityscapes in the sky is a question mark, massive cityscapes in the sky. What do they call themselves? Yeah. And we'll move on to day 3, I think.
These are amazing ideas, you guys. Thank you. I'm so glad you guys are. Let's see. They are like the Borg with a queen and more individual choice than the Borg.
So like what the Borg could be if the Borg believed in individual identities?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of like close communication and cooperation and like a collective, maybe a collective, not a collective soul, but
over soul, like
over soul. Yeah, maybe.
So what if one of the cultures did this? The sun or the lunar culture did this, and our culture is different.
Mm-hmm.
Great idea.
That is a cool idea.
So like the sun culture does this Borg with individuality, and the lunar culture is much smaller groups. They come together for their holy days. Okay.
All right. We have a name for the solar avians.
Ooh.
They're called Chabrelian.
Do both cultures claim the same name? Like sun Chebelians and moon Chebelians?
Or do the lunar avians call themselves something different?
That's a great question.
I'm liking the idea that they still all claim to be Chebelians, but now, of course, as soon as I say that, the new culture, what if they pull their name from the holy book they found? What if it's actually not a holy book, but they interpreted it as a holy book?
The technical manual.
Like the capacitors or something like.
That's awesome.
The flux capacitors.
The flux capacitors.
It's really a novelization of Back to the Future. A replicator manual, yeah.
Okay, yeah, not a, okay. So I think we have some traction with it not being a holy book, but like a technical manual.
And theology says specifically a replicator manual. Hey, making something from apparently nothing is a real spiritual experience, magical.
It is.
Yeah. All right.
I keep seeing this kind of thread of like this technology comes in and it kind of begins to alter that spirituality in some sense. So they're caught up. One group seems to be more caught up in this tech or magic as being holy or spiritual, and maybe the other one doesn't so much as much.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good distinction too.
Well, should we go to day 3? Just because we've been pointing at this for a while.
Yeah. Let's.
Yeah.
We got a lot of good stuff here, so let's start getting into the more nitty gritty stuff.
Okay.
Day 3, their troubles. Describe this world's greatest troubles. Are they manufactured, environmental, political, religious? What has been this world's greatest setbacks and failings? What calamities have befallen them?
The currents begin to change. So the currents they depend on to stay aloft. Yeah. We've already pointed at the division in the culture,
right,
between the two groups. So this could be an environmental issue that may or may not be their fault, but just a change, and it could exacerbate the split between the two cultures.
right.
I keep seeing this idea of maybe the lunar tech doesn't rise as high in the sky as the solar tech. There's a literal spatial divide between these communities, and that maybe there's
interesting
astrological things that level them out at times of year, but for the majority of the year there is this divide in the air.
Okay.
I don't know
So
how that fits with everyone else.
Well, from the chat we have the tech does not mesh well with the environment, maybe causing the currents to change. The air currents and jet streams knock cities together. The issue attenuates over time. An imbalance between the lunar and solar makes sense, as there are 4 suns and 2 moons. Was it 2 4 suns? Yeah, it was 2 suns and 4 moons, I think.
But yeah. So we've got an environmental issue causing shift that's also causing kind of like cultural and societal issues. Maybe some cities knocking each other, and maybe some death and destruction as a result. We also have this sort of high and low thing going on. How have people responded to these? What's the problem?
What kind of tensions has this caused?
Ooh, I was just thinking that the same thing, theology, that the tech is space-based tech. And so it's not meant for atmospheric use. So there's stuff in the atmosphere that is kind of isn't accounted for in the technical manual, right? And things are kind of getting clogged up.
It's releasing fumes or something into the atmosphere.
That too, yeah.
So we have some type of pollution that's negatively affecting one of our groups more than the other,
right?
Depending on their location in the atmosphere.
Pollution, waste materials.
I'm curious about the people's response, the Chebrellians. Like when all this is happening, what do they start doing? Is there war? Is there cooperation to try and fix the problems? Is one culture looking at the loss of their ships because their ships are causing the damage?
And I guess what was the thing that made them start to look like? We've established that there's a lot of underwater creatures because there's so much water. Did something happen with the underwater creatures?
Ooh. And we have a comment that from the holy book, it is important not to defeat or tamper with the safety interlocks.
I love it. I love it. Oh, you guys are awesome.
So would that mean
It's
that leads them to not fight each other and try to increase safety?
It is used by pacifists and warmongers alike.
Okay. Oh, so it's a holy book being twisted to whatever cause you want it to be.
Yeah, I think so.
What a world. What a world.
But like, yeah, so we had this crisis happen in a number of ways. What's the people's response to it? And we have an image in the chat, which I'm opening up. Oh, it's a microwave oven instruction manual. Right.
It's fantastic.
The worse things get, the more they cling to the book, which makes things worse.
Mm.
So it sounds like amidst all of the ecological and political tensions, philosophical differences, ultimately at the heart, there is this difference in approach. And their two cultures seem to be doubling down on that approach, their own approach, right?
Right.
Only exasperating these problems.
Right.
They're not cooperating. My way is the right way.
Right.
There seems to be in a stalemate, maybe, of some kind that happens.
Yeah. That's what it's sounding like. In that rigidity, like they're losing their ability to be creative, to problem solve.
Mm-hmm. And a few ships have actually fallen as a result of the crashes and the result of the fumes and the pollution.
How do you fix a problem with a ship that your holy book doesn't address?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right, because it's about the replicators, it's not about the engines.
All right. I feel like we have a good sense of their troubles and understanding. For the sake of time, if everyone's ready, we'll move on to day 4.
Yeah.
All right.
And we got to move
Day
a
4.
little faster going forward.
Yeah. It's one of those things that just invites more questions and more detail if you have the time, but we do not. So we will move a little more quickly in the next few prompts.
Real quick, I'm going to read what has also appeared in the chat because this is fantastic. The qualified service personnel, which are the clergy, increased tithes. The Chabrellian lunar forces have mysteriously been chewing through solar forces. And it erodes the relationships, increasing isolation, says Avery Weeks. And then
the lag is
we're having some lag. So some nests try to go back to the old ways, but are shunned.
Even more division. All right.
This is brilliant, you guys. All right, day 4.
All right. So day 4, their ambitions. Describe the ideals to which this world and its people have aspired to. What have they been driven to pursue? What kind of world have they built among themselves? And what have they overcame together?
So not the problems, but the beauty of this place.
Yeah.
And its people.
Their ideals and ambitions. Mm-hmm.
It can be before all these troubles started or during the time of these troubles, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not, this is just more kind of broad look into their history of like their values, the things that they have attempted at least at one point in time, when they were their best selves, so to speak.
Okay. We have from, go ahead.
vast agrarian bubbles on the tops of their cities to accommodate for the food shortage. I think they've also learned how to do hydroponics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lots of water. And they sing a lot. Like my backyard. All the birds are very
Musical
noisy.
people.
I imagine that they also have cultivated some sea life, that they have some places, like they have maybe not a caste, but a profession where they dive into the water and collect some of the sea life for food.
They have ocean farmers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lots of underwater exploration.
Yeah, lots of underwater exploration, hunting and gathering under the sea.
Like kingfishers
Mm,
is the comment.
yep.
That's good.
I'm thinking this is their currently they've been neglecting the sea because they're in the sky so much. Sea myths of creatures from the deep
Yeah.
is in our comment.
Yep.
One of the things I like to think about as far as like their ambition and ideals, especially even though we have two groups that are in disagreement, is that both groups can claim the same values, the same ideals. We see that in our own world, right? While having vastly different outcomes or practices around those things. So an ambition doesn't necessarily have to mean a golden age, or there can be a collective ideal that people say they hold, but how they interpret it and what that looks like is
We have a
right?
comment. A unifying idea is the sanctity of the nest. Both cultures.
Okay. Yep.
We take just another minute on this, and then we'll move on to day 5.
Which
Any other
nest
ideas?
eventually cease to mean biological family. Becomes what we call chosen family too.
Right. Right.
All right. If
The
we have
nest is what you make it.
if we feel like we have a good cohesive understanding of their ambitions and ideals, then we will move on to day 5. The end of the beginning. Describe this world's golden age. When was it that they first showed their promise? What was this world like at its very best moments?
Was it before they got the floating ships, or is it when they got them?
I think I don't know. And feel free to disagree, but I'm thinking that a golden age might be right after they got the ships and they were able to, like, the Chabrelians had their time in the sky, like that was around the time that the suns were out, and then the lunar folks, which I don't think we've named yet, they have their time in the sky, but that there's a kind of harmony there. If we're going to go with the singing analogy. And then theology also says world song. Every Chabrelian sang at one point or another. That there was a song that everybody contributed to.
Right. It was always going.
Yeah.
It never stopped simultaneously.
Never stopped.
Right after. The literal uplift, theology says.
Right.
So they were all Chabrelians. They just were sun and moon Chabrelians. But
okay.
When the ships came along, they changed.
Okay.
I'm thinking.
So at the best moments, they were unified. They were collectively together in this harmony.
They still
Right.
had sun and moon, right? They had
Right.
two groups.
Yeah.
But they worked together in a continuous cycle of the world song.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful.
Right. There's the difference, but not a lack of unity. Right. They're unified, but not uniform.
Right.
Right. Avery Weeks says, harmony of water, sky, and land. They were comfortable moving within worlds.
Beautiful. All right. If we have a good sense of these people and this world's golden age, we will move on to day 6, the beginning of the end. Describe where this world went wrong. What was it that pushed this civilization towards the brink of collapse? How did its people respond? Was this unexpected? Did they attempt to turn back the clock? Or did they see it coming and still were unable to change?
Right. We've already started digging into this, but let's get more
Right.
detailed about the split that went between the two peoples. The pollution that caused the problems in the water and the problems in the changing air currents.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, what did they do as a result of all this, right? Is that kind of where we're going with this question, this prompt?
Yeah. What did all the division lead to?
Geology likes the idea of the heavy elements creating clouds that float on the surface of the ocean.
Ooh, that's cool. I was thinking that too, since we have rainbows that are kind of metallic, might suggest the presence of heavy elements.
Trying to remember what we said earlier about there wasn't necessarily war, there was people tension, people going more our way is the right way.
Right. Yeah. And having the same source material, right?
An increased unwillingness to cooperate.
Right.
Was there not violent physical war, but maybe there was cultural war where like people would try and convert members of the other group into their culture?
There's this sense of them continue moving further and further away from this cycle, right? This productive cycle. It's the cycle's being broken.
The song stopped.
Oh,
right. There were gaps in the song, or there was the first gap in the song, and like the cultural shockwave of that was ginormous. Yeah, a few minutes geology go by without song.
Yep.
Dissonance, Zisa Chibi says. I mean, I imagine people just freaked the hell out.
Yeah.
It's your fault. It's your fault. No, what do we do without the song? Like, maybe they couldn't fly. They're like, everything was just.
Maybe that's how the cities crash, is they lose control of the big city ships, or the big nests.
Geology is with you there. And the first city falls, the ships were partially sustained by the vibrations in the air of the world song.
Nice.
So those aliens were playing with us. They played with they're like, hey, they sing. Let's get these these ships that are partially powered by their song.
Right.
So there's
Wow.
this gap in their song. They're no longer singing continuously. Is there a possibility?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was saying, is there a possibility that there's a new song happening, or a different song being sung?
Right. And Zisachibi said there's dissonance. So maybe a different song picks up. Like there's a few minutes of dead silence, and then a different song picks up plus the original song.
Maybe multiple different songs, people trying to fix it without working with each other.
Right.
Confusion of songs.
Yeah.
Did we just get Tower of Babel in here?
I think that might have just happened. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, says Theology.
All right. So this was seemingly unexpected.
Ooh.
This is
Hold on.
Okay.
Tanya.
The younglings are born without song.
After a while, some are born that don't sing.
Yeah.
Oof.
You guys, I'm getting choked up.
That's heavy in like the best way. Yeah. So everything is out of sync. This song, there's different song and dissonance and disorder, and now their own young being born. They can't sing or don't know the song.
Right.
I think we're at day 7.
I think we are. Day 7. It is finished. Describe the moment when it was too late. Did this world go out like a raging fire or a snuffed out flame? What happened to its people? What became of what remained of this world?
The Theology said the cities just fall, literally.
All right. The cities fall. The disruption causes this cataclysmic event. This is a whole world of people.
I'm just thinking that the psychic damage, collective damage to younglings being born who don't sing is just, it's like, it's everybody has trauma, post-traumatic PTSD from that revelation.
Theology says a few survivors manage safe harbor on some of the higher mountain peaks. And then agrees with you. That's actually huge. The children who don't sing.
I mean, I'm thinking people like literally just stop and die as this becomes more wide, as this knowledge becomes more widespread.
It's almost like a virus, this lack of song.
Yeah.
To the question, are we imagining that the cities fall simultaneously, or that lunar cities fall first, or solar cities fall first, or there is a slow beginning to the various vessels in the sky falling and giving way?
Wrote, like a silo falling over.
Yeah.
Right? It has kind of like the slow motion. You ever watch a silo video of a silo? You know, so it falls and it slides and it slides and it falls again.
And Zisachibi says the adaptability to move from sky to water is lost. So that adaptability was also shaped by the song. Theology says it's slow at first until it's suddenly on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, there's death from the falling, but there's this also that psychic collective soul death that happens. So,
that the song is, there's like this sense that, is there the spiritual sense or the biological connective consciousness? Is that something that gets severed as this song? They experience a oneness that or a lack of connectivity in a way that they never have before. An isolation. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I think it's
So-
almost like dying of a broken heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see like going back to like the beginnings when they were individual nests, right? But now we have nests with younglings who don't sing, and it's just such a completely radical shift in the entire culture. And theology says, I think it's biological and spiritual. Since there's magic in this world, I could see the vibrational magical energy of the song literally connecting them to higher abilities. It's like when the forest goes quiet. Ooh, and Avery Weeks says the younglings are born with a new skill that no one recognizes that bond them.
We're talking 97% of the population is wiped out, right?
Yeah, probably. But
Because
the younglings have this new skill.
the idea of the game is this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, but there's this new group of younglings that we asked about the survivors, what became of what remained,
Right.
a whole new
So
culture.
we have songless survivors, younglings, maybe some few handful of previous generation who managed to survive the literal fall and the heartbreak that comes with it, to kind of find refuge on these sparse mountaintops, this isolated small communities once again.
Very small, like we're talking
Yeah.
hundreds left.
Right.
Maybe hundreds.
All right.
The skill
Ooh.
can't fully develop because there isn't the time to learn when the focus is survival, says Zisa Chibi.
That sounds like quite the ending to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So now we will kind of go back and just close our eyes and take a few breaths and kind of walk our way out of this world. I'll read this last prompt, the afterworld, and then just finish with a quick reminder. So as you feel free, describe what this world has taught you. After we have built this world together and you've witnessed its end, and as far as the Watcher goes, we have witnessed yet another world. How do we remember them as the Watcher and as individuals as we walk our way out of this game and we shed this identity that we no longer have to have anymore? How do we remember these people and what have they taught us? Because we are in fact not Watchers. We are not collective eternal beings watching the ends of the world. We are who we are in our own times and places, surrounded by our own problems and troubles and ambitions, golden ages and difficulties, beginnings and endings. So as we just finish here, feel free now after I finish here to we will kind of debrief and talk about what the world's taught us and how do we remember them. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. What was the experience like for you as a viewer and a participant? While we wait for the lag, I have a couple small thoughts that meaning is everywhere. We can make meaning from anything, right? The technical manual. So
Right.
Everything can have meaning. So therefore, question everything. Right? Don't accept blindly everything you think is truth. Give it some skepticism. And keep singing.
Yes, that's
Mm.
good. Keep singing.
Theology says each faction had parts of the truth. So working together, we can find fuller truth, perhaps, is what we can take from that.
Mm. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tanya.
I was going to say, like, when they were working in harmony, when everybody had their part and they had their part of the truth, but were able to work with the other parts of the truth to like kind of make it whole. That was their golden age. When they could all have that piece of it.
Just keep thinking about this idea of finding a rhythm,
Yeah.
maintaining a rhythm, and how important having a rhythm as an individual spiritual person and as collectively as a community, the importance of a rhythm and how it can shape and form us and keep things moving in a direction that feels good and healthy.
Mm.
The opposite of disorder. I also keep thinking about the idea of the difference and how difference doesn't mean disunity.
Right.
It doesn't have to.
Right.
Zisa Chibi says, when a drastic change breaks harmony, don't panic. Harmony can be found again.
And theology says the religion in this world that spawned from the technical manual felt like the strongest wedge to me. Say
How
more.
to say
Yeah.
theology also was one of the creative forces behind this idea of the technical manual. What else was the experience like for you to play?
Yeah. I think a lot of us already mentioned like how moving this was. Avery Weeks says, it was interesting to me that the experience of creating this world was spiritual as we watched the society lose its connection to its higher soul, which highlights the need for spirituality. Yeah.
So playing through a loss and seeing how it caused a loss of connection to higher soul is for us as us as players goes, oh, this is how this is important.
Yeah. That without it, like the whole society crumbled.
I'm also catching the idea of the spirituality of creating the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to restate everything, but just the ability to like imagine a different world, even one that we know is coming to an end collectively.
Yes.
And I think that's, for me, something this game in particular and just like this moment helps really highlight for me is that I don't come from a spiritual religious tradition that is very comfortable with change and endings, despite the fact that as someone who professes to have faith in this backwoods carpenter who was raised back to life, historically, my tradition has not been one that is comfortable with death and endings and letting things go and die so something new can come. So we have no ability to imagine. We seem to lack an ability to imagine something different because we're so just stubbornly have our hands so tightly wrapped around what we think we know is the truth, and are unwilling to experience maybe a death that could lead to new life and new orientations and new formations of spirituality.
Theology says the concept of the organization that claimed to be the most spiritual in the world was, we know, born from the least spiritual source, which I think is a warning and a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You can find spirituality everywhere, but also, it might come from impure or questionable sources. And then theology got meta here. There's a Trevelyan who somehow got to watch this Twitch stream through their song.
And has a great revelation as a result.
Hopefully that one survived. Maybe to help raise the new younglings.
Right.
Something I consistently think about every time I revisit this game is just in the ways in which that every moment is an eschaton. Every moment is an ending and a beginning. It's an invitation into something new, and an invitation to possibly let go of something that needs to pass.
Yeah.
I'm not who I was now. The person I was at 8:30 no longer exists. The person who I am now is totally different because of this interaction and this relation that happened over creating this world that was passing away. Every moment is an invitation into that reality.
Every week says we are all part Celebrian. Retelling, and theology says retelling our story in another dimension.
You said it as a question, but we're taking it as a statement.
Yep.
Theology.
Brian, I have to say that this is the second time in as many weeks that we've played this game with you. And both times I'm like deeply affected and really, really moved by it. And I think part of that is, I think it's partly because of the collective imagining that we're doing. And if you've seen me talk on this subject before, you know that connection to other people, that sense of community and communion is very essential for me in terms of spirituality. So this was a really incredible experience.
Thank you for those kind words, Tanya. I think one of the things, I don't think I defined spirituality at the beginning of this for my own self, but for me, it's something that leads to greater connection with ourselves, with the divine, and however we conceive that, and with our neighbor and the people around us. And so I think any good spirituality is something that is fostering deeper connection in every possible direction. So
Right.
I agree with you that there's a collective part of this that makes this, in my experience, after writing it as a solo game, really love it more as a group game.
Yeah. Theology said it helps that we're all spiritually oriented in some respects.
And also wants to know, where can I find a copy of this game? How is this game distributed? Can I ask my FLGS from the local game store to order me a copy?
No, you can't get it at your game store because it's just a one-page download game. But paradoxpress.games or Paradox Press on Itch.io, you can find it in both, or either of those places can get you there.
I don't have those. I have to type them in.
I typed them in earlier, and we typed them back in a little. They're there now. Avery Weeks says dealing with loss and death is scary, and I try to avoid it at all costs. Making someone deal with it without our worst fears coming true is helpful.
So we could use this game to confront people's fears and concerns about
Yeah.
grief and loss and death.
Yeah.
I definitely think so. You know, in one sense, it's meant to some degree or another. It's the reason I was thinking about the topic, not so much in an overtly spiritual sense, but just that we do live in a cycle of death and life.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be stars going supernova to spin whole galaxies into the existence billions of years later, or the fact that I take scraps and leaves and cuttings and the leftovers of plants and compost it in my yard to be able to put back into my garden or on the farm. That there's an aspect of composting in the sense of that doesn't have to be scary. It can still be difficult. Death is surely difficult, but I think this kind of space can help us engage with it in a way that can help us see it in a different light. So maybe these younglings that don't have a song, that are struggling to survive, that there's something there that'll arise, something new, something beautiful amongst that community.
Right.
In the same way, death is always tragic, I think, but there's always, I think we can find life on the other side of it.
And two thoughts I had just now is one is they don't have a song in the sense that the cultures they come from define song. But maybe they have a song in some other new way they're going to discover.
Hmm.
And then you mentioned compost. And I just think as half a thought about the playing of games is somewhat like creating a compost pile for ourselves, right? It gives us material, raw material to
Right.
turn over and let ferment, rot if you want to be negative, but ferment, right? And create fertileness within ourselves.
That's good. Yeah. And just a positive spin for, good compost is full of life.
It is.
Full
Yeah.
of it.
Yep.
Even in the sense of I think about someone was talking in our neighborhood about a tree that's fallen and it's been taken over by kind of like moss and it's been sitting there for a long time. And people were talking about how it's dead and it's useless. I'm like, that tree's probably more alive in this moment than it's ever been. There's more life in the middle of that rot and decay of that tree than there ever was when it was upright.
So now would be a good time for closing thoughts from the Peanut Gallery, from Twitch viewers, from each of us on screen here.
Yeah.
If there, we kind of just said some, but any last thoughts before we go?
I would just like to express my immense gratitude for getting the chance to be here with both of you and everyone watching again. It's always just an absolute joy to have any kind of conversation with both of you. And so I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Oh, we are honored to have you.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely a treat.
Yeah.
Thank you all for hanging out and participating and creating this beautiful world we created together.
Yeah. Theology has some closing thoughts.
From the manual.
From the manual, press potato repeatedly until the number you wish appears in the display. Thank you all for this opportunity to build and destroy a world together. I am delighted by the depth this presented. And I said it before, I'm just awed by this game and this exercise and by the people who participate in it. It's really is a deeply moving experience.
Yeah. You can watch it here on Twitch again for next 2 weeks and eventually on our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and search for Cast with 2 T's Gamers. And tune in next month, July 28th is the fourth Thursday of the month when Jay Dragon will be joining us to probably play Wander Home. We might change our minds with Jay in the meantime, but that's probably what we're going to do and discuss the spiritual benefits and applications of this pastoral game of animal people wandering the world together.
Mhm. So we hope to see you next month. And take care, everybody.
Blessings, y'all.